I'm joined by Brodie Paterson from Stirling University and Justin Tyas from Harrow Council, and we're going to have a little chat about workplace violence. Brodie, how big a problem is work-related violence and aggression for NHS staff?
Still a very big problem. Some suggestions we might be getting slightly better at managing it, but it's still a very significant problem. Vast majority of the aggression violence might be categorised as minor verbal abuse, threatening behaviour. Small proportion of it involves physical violence, and some of that obviously results in serious harm. But verbal abuse also has effects on staff over the longer term, poses a huge stressor in terms of organisations.
How many sort of incidents are there a year?
Varies a little bit from country to country. Statistics are broken down by Wales, England, Scotland. Scotland had approximately 10,000 incidents last year. But there's a big problem with people under-reporting. People don't report for a variety of reasons.
What is it that makes parking attendants vulnerable to violence and aggression?
I think there's a variety of reasons. The sort of general risk factors are quite well known in that they're predominantly lone workers, work away from a fixed base. They have a high degree of contact with the public. I think there are other issues as well around that. Often seen that if you seem to deny a service and to hinder someone, then that can be a risk factor for violence. There are obviously local organisational issues as well. I also happen to think that the more societal issues at large, public perceptions as well, also has an impact on the potential for violence towards the attendants. My research was around qualitative and looking at the workers' experience of violence, and the perception was that there were quite negative media stories for attendants. One particular guy, he relayed a story where an aggressor came up to him and said, had you heard about this particular story about a parking attendant being attacked in Battersea? I've heard about that, I'm going to do the same thing to you. Now, I'm not suggesting that actually he read that story and that made him go and act that way, but I do think that they have a very strong identity around uniform. They are very visible, and I do think that societal, perception of discourses does have a potential impact.
And is that part of the thing with the NHS as well? Is perception of a bit of a problem as well? Does that create a problem in terms of in some respects certain jobs are more violent than others, or there's more violence involved in certain areas?
There's probably two dimensions. If you look at the areas which tend to be violence prone, health, social care, education, customer service, that issue of service is around, and one of the suggestions from the literature is people confound service and servitude. They kind of think it's okay to be abusive to certain people because it's an unequal power relationship. It's more complex than that, because obviously in certain areas you've got the presence of mental health issues, confusion, certain staff by the role involved in limit setting. So it's this kind of ecological perspective. It's a series of factors coming together.
And who is it that's perpetrating the instances of violence?
Contrary to the kind of stereotype of the drunken A&E, probably the most typical perpetrator of violence and aggression in the health service is an elderly lady aged over 85 with dementia. That's not the stereotype, and the types of violence they perpetrate tend to be relatively minor. They might shout, they might abuse, they might nip, they might scratch.
And do you think that Britain's workplaces are violent places to be?
I think the data suggests we have a problem with workplace violence. If you compare it to European statistics, we're actually fairly similar. We have workplace violence maybe slightly more frequently in some areas, but it tends to be the same areas, the same industries, which are workplace violence prone.
Do you think it's a problem in local government?
In my experience, I think it is a problem in certain sectors of local government. You do see staff that are at the, if you like, the sharp end. There tend to be more issues where people have critical service come into housing departments demanding things. People are quite emotional sometimes, and actually it's a question of how well we communicate with those staff and the sort of services we try and offer. And sometimes if we're denying a service as well, then actually it becomes a particular issue. So I think there are pockets certainly within local government.
And what do you think organisations can do to tackle the issues around violence and aggression to staff?
I think it's got to be a whole joined-up process, really. I think you've got to have the right policies in place to start with, and it's got to be tackled from the top down and up as well. It's all very well sort of saying, well, this is what we're going to do, and an incident happens. I've seen that, incident happens to someone, politicians jump up and down, and we must do something about this, but it's got to be backed up. I think the best will in the world is sometimes that we aren't always going to prevent all violence.
Brodie, Justin, thank you very much.